our next part of this session. It's a fireside chat on DevOps and Microservices from our keynote speaker, Mr. Vijay, moderated by the Managing Director of INFOLOB Global, Mr. Satyendra Pasalapudi. Let's welcome them onto the stage, ladies and gentlemen, with a big round of applause.
Discussion continues on how these are going to help us in real world scenarios, right? That's what all about is about the Fireside Chat. The first question I want to ask you is, how does DevOps culture influence the efficiency and speed of the cloud native applications in development process point of view?
Thanks, Vijay. So first of all, as we talked about Dev and Ops, it's two teams. Development is a separate team and operations is a separate team. And now the future is talking about DevSecOps, which is development, security and operations. Earlier in the Agile methodology and all, we were talking about somebody is writing the development and there's a process of testing and all those things, and there is no automation in play, to be frank. With the DevOps, the culture of automation, the culture of collaboration, everything came into picture, and that's where we are seeing sprints where the development is happening very rapidly because of the collaboration between the teams. And rather than finding at the end the problems, people are able to sort it out on a day-to-day basis while they're doing both the development and operations together. So that's the beauty of the DevOps, and then future definitely yes, it will accelerate because of the automation. The efficiency kicks in because there is no manual method or manual process. So the entire CI/CD pipeline, we call it as continuous integration, continuous deployment, is where increases the efficiency when we talk about it. Okay. Now I'm going to ask Vijay another question. So Vijay, can you share any best practices for fostering collaboration between development and operations teams in the cloud development native context?
Yeah, sure. I think you kind of answered it a little bit. You started saying there are like two different teams, right? So when you work with different teams, first you need to think about unified goals, right? What are we trying to achieve? Those are very, very important for any of the DevOps teams that you work with, right? For example, if you're collaborating with dev teams, with operational teams, right? You need to understand what is the operational teams and the dev teams' basic goals that they're trying to achieve. For example, how frequently they want to deploy, right? Operational teams, how frequently they want to do patching. And development teams, how frequently they want to deploy the new code. So you need to have a basic understanding of these two teams and then their goals, having that in mind, and then use adaptive collaborative tools. For example, in the world I have seen people are using Zira is one of the tools, right? Confluence is another tool. So use these tools efficiently to collaborate between the teams, and then of course there are some tools like Slack and groups are there, right? So use those tools. That's what most of the large organizations will use for the collaborations between the teams. And then there are some web hookups you will also have within those tools. You can incorporate it, and then whenever there is a specific issue, everyone will get notified, they will communicate, and they will jump on a call, and then they will try to do it. They will try to fix the problem. And then when there is a problem exists, the other best practice I see is, rather than blaming each other, try to work on the solution. So we can decide on what is the main problem, and then what you can learn out of this problem, right? How are you going to solve this problem? So the culture should be different, right? Rather than saying this is operational issue, this is developer's issue. Rather than discussing about those issues, work towards a specific solution that we're going to do, right? Tell me a company where you've never seen an issue happen. SF2 or a very critical issue. All the companies within the world will have faced some issues. So the teams, the organizations that get succeeded are the teams, they work towards the solution, learn something out of it. So those are the perspectives that we need to take into consideration when we work with operational teams, with dev teams, and then do collaboration teams, and then educate ourselves and maintain proper documentation of these issues going forward.
So Vijay, continuation to this question, in the same context, when you talk about the tools being on the DevOps side, So working with Amazon, what are the tools normally you people will be using it like Jira or whatever, so that what are the most popular tools in that context and what people have to be using them?
Yeah, that is
off the record.
So we have a pretty good internal communication tools. For example, if you write a document, the document can be shared with others as well. For example, Google Docs, right? So like that, we have documentations, and then people can read those documentations, and then they will give you comments for your document. So if I have an idea, if I have to take it to my management, how do I do it? I write the documentation, I share it with the leadership team, they will read the documentation. My idea it can be a 1-pager or 6-pager, depends on what kind of idea. So those kind of tools we use for internal ideas. And then we have Slacks we use. And then there are some other internal tools where we use, like Quip. Quip is another tool that we use. So there are a lot of collaboration tools, right? So these are some of the things that I have seen being used. Gotcha. So with that, how much time we have? So do we have time for another question? Yeah. What are the main challenges organizations face when transitioning to cloud-native applications and DevOps methodologies? You must have seen quite a lot of organizations. What are the challenges most of the organizations run into?
So first of all, when we talk about the cloud-native development and all, pretty much all the startups are these days starting with whether it's AWS or Azure or Google, and they have a very good, or Oracle. So they have a very good practice in terms of funding these startups and all those things. So if a pretty much new startup is coming up, I don't see much challenges there because they're starting directly on the cloud with the microservices architecture or the containers. But there are some organizations which are pretty much a 20-year-old or 15-year-old organizations want to get onto the cloud. And that's where the challenges comes into picture. The foundation, the way the cloud works, one has to understand, and you can't just leave the servers unattended or shut it down, otherwise the cost inflation comes into picture. Whereas the mindset on the on-premise is not like that. The servers need not be shut down because of whatever the once you pay for it, and that's what the history. But on the cloud, they are definitely different. And the connectivity aspects or the speed at which the trainings are the most important aspects. One is to train on the cloud basics first and then get on to the cloud native development. And then other important aspect is on the launch of the servers or on the on-premises, the automation is not much. So one has to talk about training the resources on the CI/CD pipeline, rebranding or rebadging those resources as the CI/CD resources onto the cloud. So the organizations which have started their code development long back, it's a little bit problem because they will be using their source code or something else, whereas on the cloud you talk about Git or GitLab or GitHub or whatever it is. So those are the areas, and that's where the tooling things which I mentioned about the Jira or the Confluence and all from the documentation, it makes a lot of sense for the people to use those. So that's the basic difference where organizations have to adopt the cloud side of the story, the automation, the tooling and everything. Then it takes. But the good point is most of the startups these days are cloud-born startups. So there is not much until unless the old organizations have transitioned.
Got it.
Yes, I think we will leave the floor for any questions for both of us, and maybe next 2 questions we can take, keeping in view the importance of the time. We have to vacate this stage for the next round of speakers who are going to come in. Any questions from the audience?
Or we can take the questions offline. So we will be hanging out here, so feel free to reach out to us.
Oh, perfect.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you.